Indigenous Rights Radio, because knowledge is power.
This is Shaldon Ferris for Cultural Survival's Indigenous Rights Radio. We're very happy and honored to have Michelle Shanandoah with us today. Now, Michelle Shanandoah is the founder of the non-profit organization Rematriation, which is dedicated to uplifting the voices of Indigenous women. Inspired by her grandmothers, who led generations of Oneida Nation land claims, Michelle continues their legacy and passion for rematriating her people's lands. Thank you so much for joining us today, Michelle. So I tried to do an introduction, but in your own words, who is Michelle Shanandoah?
Yes, Siguli Sugwe, Galuhianuas Nyangets, Onyoteakani'i. My name is Michelle Shanandoah. I'm a member of the Oneida Nation Wolf Clan of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. And my Ungwahue name, my name given to me by my people, is Galuhianuas, which means that she's fond of the sky. And so I'm really grateful to be here with you today, Sheldon, and thank you so much for inviting me to participate in this interview.
We're happy to have you with us today, Michelle. So let's kick off with the first question. How has growing up within the Haudenosaunee culture influenced your core values and life's work?
Yeah, it's influenced everything. I mean, I am Haudenosaunee. We are a confederacy of 6 nations that are located in what people call upstate New York and into southern Canada. And we have been a confederacy of peoples that have been together since time immemorial. And we became the Haudenosaunee during a time of great peace that came to our people more than 1,000 years ago. But prior to that, our clans and our nations have existed for forever. And so it is in my DNA, it's in who I am, it's in the instructions that I've received growing up in terms of carrying on our culture, our way of life, and being able to share this with the world as well, because our people received a message and we are ambassadors of that message. It's a message of peace. And so it's everything from a cellular level to spiritual and giving me direction in the world as who I am as a person.
That's good to hear. Thank you for your answer, Michelle. You've mentioned that the essence of being Haudenosaunee is about striving for peace. Can you expand on what that means in a modern context?
Yeah, absolutely. Peace for us was brought to us by a messenger. And, as all peoples around the world, we've had, different periods of time where there might be, getting along or moving through challenges, just like we are today. And there was a very, very dark period in our people's lives, and our nations were at war with each other. And during that time, a messenger came to us with this message of peace and living with a good mind, and united our people through this very powerful spiritual message, which is actually really quite simple. And the simplicity of it sometimes can be overlooked by people who are not familiar with our culture. But it's something that has united 6 different nations in peace.
Thanks for your answer. Moving on to the next question, what does Indigenous feminism look like to you, and how does it differ from Western understandings of feminism?
Well, that's a very challenging question in a way, because as Haudenosaunee people, our cosmology centers around a woman, we call her Sky Woman, who was the first being to come here to this earth. And from her life and her story, which is a very long story, that this is eventually how humans came to be here on earth. So our entire worldview is centered around a woman, right? Our creation story, begins with a woman, and in that story is central. Women are very central to our understanding of who we are. So you can even see it in today that, women are celebrated as life givers. We did not come from the rib of a man. We, have not had to fight for our status and position within our communities, but it's one that is revered. It's one that's elevated and it's safe. And we also, have clan mothers who guide the leadership of our nations. And, with that, every mother, has a voice and has autonomy and authority. And so for us, as Haudenosaunee people, this idea, of Indigenous feminism is one that I necessarily can't give definition to, because feminism, from my understanding, comes also from the having to push back against patriarchy. I can see in today's context how, as peoples, we've had to push against that patriarchy and how it's affected our women. But that's a very different context than, living and being in a space that celebrates you as a woman. So for me, I like to refer back to the words of one of our clan mothers, who we call Mama Bear. And she is a Mohawk Bear clan mother. And she was asked this question about feminism. And she says, "We're not feminists, we're the law." And this was something that her grandmother shared, that we as women, we are the law. And so for me, however, folks wish to, see that in relationship to feminism, I say that they're different. But at the same time, I understand that there are many Indigenous peoples around the world and, who speak about Indigenous feminism, but from their point of view and their perspective. But I think as a Haudenosaunee woman, I would say I'd like to, defer to Mama Bear's words.
It sounds to me like Mama Bear was a wise woman. Let's talk now about your work at Rematriation. How did it come about, and what are you trying to achieve with Rematriation?
Yeah, well, I had sort of always dreamed of creating a space, much like cultural survival, one where Indigenous voice is centered. And I also saw, one where Indigenous women's voices are centered. So I, come from a family where a lot of our women, particularly starting with my great-grandmother and my grandmother, and created a family legacy to fight for our land claims. So that's the path I started on, was going into law school. And at the same time, I had always dreamed of creating this space for Indigenous women's voices. And as life would have it, creation decided, going down this path of law is not for you, and put your attention over here. And it took me a little while. I kind of had to fight and struggle to say, wait, no, I really want to be involved in law. And my mother would remind me that, Michelle, we as Haudenosaunee people, we have our laws, and this is, what you have to uphold. And so, in the shifts and changes of my life, creation pushed me in the direction of really beginning to work with our women at home and, among the Haudenosaunee nations. And with that, I started to look at, the impacts of trauma that, directly was affecting our people, from violence and sexual violence and impacts of residential schools and, the impacts of colonization. And so at the same time that I'm thinking about, this publication, I started as Rematriation. We also started at the same time doing a lot of gathering spaces for our women. And so there was kind of these two sort of, energies that were pushing pushing me and my work, and they sort of all just became into one space, which we've called, rematriation, and now we do quite a significant amount of work to create space for our Indigenous women to share their knowledge, their voice, their healing, and also at the same time to, share that knowledge with our people, and also, though, to the public in ways that, are appropriate, of course, to share what we know in terms of being able to live in balance with the earth and with each other, so that, we can overcome those harms of colonization and focus in on our strengths that we've always had as Haudenosaunee women and as Indigenous women, but then to share that love and that compassion and that forgiveness and healing with others who live here in our homelands, so that they can experience that feeling as well, and begin to think about their relationship with their neighbors or their relationship with the land that they're on. So here we are 10 years later, and rematriation continues, and we still now tell stories through videos and podcasts, and also still creating these gathering spaces, which are really proving to be a space of love and healing.
How does the historical role and place of women within the Haudenosaunee Confederacy inform the modern work of rematriation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As I explained earlier, in our creation story of Sky Woman, and knowing that, we are the children of Sky Woman today. I mean, that still, resonates and pulses through, our beingness. And so, you put that into perspective, and very early times of human beings here on Earth, we all as humans experience death. And for the first time, with our loved ones, and understanding, what does this mean? How, why do I feel all this stuff that I'm feeling? And people not being able to carry on. And so with that, our clan system was created out of a vision that came from a young man. And this clan system began to develop how we sit in our longhouses. And when somebody would be, lose a family member on one side of the longhouse, the other side of the longhouse would come to take care of them, to help them through that time of grief, and to then be able to come back to their duties that they, that we all have to carry on in our daily lives. And so that compassion and caretaking and way of decision making, of passing passing decisions back and forth across the house of our longhouses, became the way we made decisions. And those processes are still in place today. And those were things that the founding fathers of the United States had seen. And, that's kind of what really inspired them. And you can look at the governance of the United States today, and they'll pass decisions back and forth in Congress. And, there's a third side with an executive, that you can see all this playing out today. So I don't want to go too far down that path, but to just kind of show people the parallels between our form of governance that came out of a space of caretaking for each other and decision making as a people, and giving voice to all people, is what became the basis for the United States government. But that element of caretaking for the people didn't translate into the United States. But coming back to the Haudenosaunee, the reason we do that is to be able to show our compassion and love, and to be able to help others. And so the role of women, was led by a clan mother. In each one of those clans that sits in the longhouse, there's multiple clans and multiple clan families, and they're led by a woman, each one of those clans. And so those women are very much in charge of the well-being of her clan. Just like any mother or grandmother, she's going to make sure that all of her children are fed. She's going to make sure to help to keep peace among her children. She's going to listen to the issues that they have and try to resolve them if it's with, another family or another clan, right? So that's how we operate within our nations. And then when you flash forward into time, just like all peoples, again, we had this dark period where we actually began to fight with each other, and these very, very brutal blood wars came. And then came this peacemaker, right, who brought this message of peace that helped to bring us to a space of a good mind, to learn how to have forgiveness with each other. And at that point, a new governance was created for us. And it brought that governance of our women and our clan mothers and our clans alongside creation of chiefs that would work with all of these clans. And that then became a space to give voice for the people and to care for the spiritual well-being of all of the people, right? And this is how we were to operate, to work in peace. But the clan mother, she still directs her chief. She chooses the chief. And people think when they hear chief that they think, oh, he's the person who's in charge. And for Haudenosaunee, that's not true. It's actually the clan mothers who are listening to the voice of the people. She's in charge. And she tells her chief who she selects, and she also has the right to remove him from his position, right? So she holds the authority, but she'll tell him what, the bounds are of, when he meets with other people, what can he talk about? What can he decide on? What is he not allowed to make decisions on? And he has to work for the people. If he starts to make decisions for his own self-interest, she has the right to remove him from that position, right? And choose somebody else. And all these positions are for life, but she has that authority.
Thanks again for your answer. Please tell us about your latest project of Rematriated Voices. What feedback have you been receiving so far?
So Rematriated Voices is a 5-part talk show series with a podcast companion. So people can watch the talk show online, or they can, listen to an extended version of the podcast. So Rematriated Voices was, also part of this, dream that I had to create a space to bring our elders, our traditional knowledge holders, our leaders, and friends, allies, right, who are doing the work alongside us to be able to come together to talk about a lot of these values that I'm speaking of today, and to talk about the histories that have been left out of so much of the history books, especially in the United States, and to share these aspects of our lives, our governance, the influence that we've had, much of what we're speaking about today, and to be able to share that in a way that people could, watch and engage with multiple Haudenosaunee people, and to be able to hear all the different perspectives and nuances. So it's interesting because the series, if you watch the video, each video is about an hour long, but each video was actually anywhere from 2 to 3 hours of an interview. So we had to kind of really, to scale that back. But there's so much that has been left out of histories, and that people today, especially here in the United States, don't really know that history, and they don't understand how it impacts their daily lives, right? So how different would it be in the United States if people knew that the roots and the origins of their Constitution was Indigenous? And that not only was it Indigenous, but that there were very, very important aspects that were left out deliberately, aspects regarding, peace and peacemaking, elements regarding compassion for one another, and elements regarding forgiveness and what does that look like? How do you walk through forgiveness to be able to arrive to peace? It's a concept with not a lot of clear understanding in regard to action. But then also recognizing that, there's love and caretaking that really is the foundation of being able to have a healthy democracy. And to really be able to create space for all people's voices, we have, since the beginning of our Confederacy, have been a people of inclusion, have been a people of fairness and equity and honesty. And that's all built into our governance. So can you imagine what that would look like today in a forum, such as the United States, that those are the core principles underneath how their actions are to, and their decisions are to take shape into the world. It'd be very different. And it would be also very different to have the women behind those decisions who are thinking about, ensuring that all people are fed, ensuring that all people are warm at night and have a place to sleep, right? There's a lot of concepts that and ways of agreement, that we operate in. One of them, we have one of our traditional, wampum belts is called the one dish, one spoon. And it's all white. And in the middle, there's a purple circle. And that purple circle also has white in the middle of it. So you can see we call it like a dish. It's a bowl. And it represents this like dish of life, this bowl of life. And it says that, basically, we all will have to eat from this dish. And that if one of us cannot eat, then we all have to wait to eat until we can all eat. And then we can eat, right? We all have to make sure that there's enough food in there. I'm not going to go and overfish the water that we both share because I know you also have to go there to fish. I'm not going to leave the land devastated because we all have to use this soil to be able to grow our foods. It's a way of caretaking. It's a responsibility that we have for each other. So, all those types of sharing and stories and histories are part of what people can hear in Rematriated Voices. And there's some really wonderful people, one in particular who is an elder and an Indigenous midwife who is Mohawk. Her name is Gudgie Cook. And she actually really helped to birth rematriation into the world that we see today. And she brought this terminology from Indigenous midwifery, and so we create space for her to share about that. We have another. She's in an interview with Robin Wall Kimmerer, who is a internationally known botanist and Indigenous scientist, who has written this book called Braiding Sweetgrass. A lot of people really love her work. It's a New York Times bestseller. We have two young chiefs from the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and one of our elder, clan mothers and a faith keeper. So we have all of this, these wonderful people with this really deep knowledge, and they're putting it into the context of today. So it's not just historical, but it's about how do we look at this historical context and apply it today, and how is it being applied today? We even talk about issues such as the doctrine of discovery and how Indigenous women are responding to the doctrine of discovery in their work today, and what are some of our allies doing to work alongside us to help to elevate this knowledge into the world, to change it, right? To make a difference and to start looking at the values that we're living as human beings, and how to kind of really, take different thoughts into consideration and perhaps create a paradigm shift towards life.
Thank you for your answer. I have a last question for you. What vision do you have for the future?
Well, the work that I do now is always thinking of the future. And the reality is that, we're in this very critical time as human beings that we have to shift our values. So there is a faith keeper from the Oneida Nation. His name is Oren Lyons, very, very well known worldwide in his work in the United Nations. And he says, this is the moment. This is the final, the moment where we all have to get up and, put on those boxing gloves and get in the ring. And he says, we can't just stand by anymore. And he says, really, the time we're in comes down to 4 words, and it's value change for survival. And it's my hope that the work that we do here at Rematriation is to help to create that paradigm shift so that we can begin to orientate our thinking towards life, think about the future generations, because the work we do here at Rematriation is not just for our future generations as Indigenous people, but it's everyone's. It's your great, great, great grandchildren into the future. How will they know us? They will know us by the quality of water they have, by the quality of the food they have, the quality of the soil to grow their foods. And so those are things that are decision points that we have to make at this point. So how are we living? We'll have to shift those values so that, there is clean water. I believe it's a time where we have to really put our attention and energy and love to the water. Let's all sing songs of love to the water to help to raise that vibration, because the water nourishes all of life, right? And so that is felt by our children. That's felt within, the babies in the womb. It's felt by, how we, hydrate ourselves every day, how our crops and our fields, the foods are hydrated and continue to live. And so the water moves everywhere around the earth. It's the blood of our Mother Earth. And so we really have to, put that love and that intention into the life that supports us and sustains us. So it's my hope that, people will see our work and begin to really think about those values that we share. And so rematriation, as a definition that we've given as Haudenosaunee women, is returning the sacred to the mother. And that's returning that love that she gives to us back onto her and to all of her children.
Thank you so much to Michelle Shenandoah for joining us today. For more on the rights of Indigenous peoples, visit cs.org and follow Cultural Survival on all social media platforms.